Salutations. This is Matthew Walker, and welcome to Human Factors Engineering with Medical Device Academy. And on today's episode of Would That Be Considered a Use Error, we're going to examine the recent plethora of news articles regarding NyQuil Chicken's place in the culinary arts. First things first, when I say NyQuil Chicken, I'm referring to the sleepy chicken recipe where a video posted on social media depicted a recipe that involved cooking chicken in NyQuil. Thankfully, NyQuil has a strong flavor profile to complement the absolute lack of seasoning shown in the picture. This has gained enough traction in the media that the FDA has also issued a warning to very specifically not do this as it could kill you. Therefore, our official stance mimics regulatory guidelines, and Medical Device Academy suggests all users comply with the FDA and manufacturer recommendations. Let's establish our definition of a use error before we dive in. Today, we're going to use the FDA's definition from the current guidance document, Applying Human Factors and Usability Engineering to Medical Devices. I normally don't like to read straight from a slide when presenting, but this is coming straight from the governing body. Therefore, the definition we'll use for a use error is user action or lack of action that was different from that expected by the manufacturer and caused a result that one, was different from the result expected by the user, and two, was not caused solely by device failure, and three, did or could result in harm. The astute viewer will recognize that the guidance document is specific to devices, and, well, NyQuil does not appear to be a device, but I'm a child of the 90s, and SpongeBob taught my entire generation to use our imagination. So we're going to do just that and examine this use case through that lens. Let's take this incident and walk it through a decision tree to see if this should be considered a use error in accordance with our now defined criteria. Let's pretend we're prosecutors and we're examining this case using the guidance document definition as statutory law to determine if evidence of probable cause of a use error exists, in which we can charge the user with the crime of committing a use error. In order to do this, we need to take the text of the definition and break it down into all of the criteria that needs to be fulfilled in order to be considered a use error. And from the one law class I took in college, this process could be compared to meeting the elements of the offense for a crime. And I'm also willing to bet if I polled my chef friends, this would be unanimously considered a culinary crime. Let's isolate some of our criteria. So we want to look here, 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 and here for now. I will switch over to my highlighter and let's take a look at the text. First, do we have a user? The answer is yes. Yes, we do have a user. There in the video, you can observe the user using the device. Did they take an action or have a lack of action? The answer to that question is also going to be yes. They most definitely took an action. That is for sure. However, was that action different from what was expected by the manufacturer? Now, I'm not the manufacturer. I don't happen to have their URRA in front of me. So we're going to have to skim the internet for some quick open source intelligence to see if there's any objectively demonstrable evidence either proving or disproving a theoretical manufacturer expectation. Okay, so the instructions for use provided with the bottle do not include any directions for cooking. None of the warning materials discuss cooking either. And this is conjecture on my part here, but the manufacturer appears to outline written expectations that the user take NyQuil only as directed and only using the dose cup provided. I believe it would be reasonable to conclude that the manufacturer is probably not expecting dinner parties to feature cordon bleu de poulet NyQuil. Now we've established that in this case there was a user that did perform an action, and that action was different than what the manufacturer expected. This can be interpreted a few different ways. Could a manufacturer expect that users may perform actions outside of the written instructions? Yeah, that is a reasonable expectation and conclusion. Anytime the user is required to dispense a set amount of liquid from a bottle, the manufacturer could expect that some users may utilize inaccurate dispensing methods. Perhaps they have their own measuring container, or they estimate dosage by the swig, dispensing medication directly into their mouth. We can also see that in this case, the manufacturer has implemented risk controls to mitigate that. One, they included instructions outlining how to use the product. Two, a dose cup is provided to the user. And three, in addition to instructions, the user is cautioned or warned specifically to only use the provided dose cup. The social media video and the pictures show those three things not being done by the user. This level of unintended use would not easily be foreseen by any manufacturer. And in fact, prior to the news articles and FDA warning, it may even be unreasonable to expect a manufacturer to capture all of the more extreme use errors that hopefully have an extremely low probability of occurrence, at least prior to market authorization. This FDA warning might trigger some burdensome risk management activities, as now post market surveillance for this and similar types of products now have an identified potential emerging issue related to use errors and social media challenges. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We still have not even determined if this was a use error. That conclusion still requires that the expected action also results in meeting three more specific criteria. That additional criteria is that the result has to be different from what the user expected, not be caused just by the failure of the device, and either did or could have resulted in harm. For fun, let's work backwards. We have to ask the questions: did this incident result in harm, or could it have resulted in harm? And those are two separate questions to answer. And I think this is a great opportunity to hit up our OSINT resources and see what the interwebs thinks about all this. Did the action result in harm? At least at the time of making this video, I couldn't find any objectively demonstrable evidence that the action resulted in any level of harm. What that means is that now we need to look at, could this potentially cause harm? The FDA's warning specifically outlines multiple potential harms from cooking with NyQuil. The cooking can concentrate the dosage. The vapors can cause the user to inhale the medication. Uh, the vapors themselves can even be damaging to the lungs. I think that that is probably sufficient evidence to believe that potential harm could exist. The next element of this offense is that if there were a device failure, it cannot be the only reason for the error. There both needs to be a failure, and that failure needs to be the only reason that the error happened. I can't determine that there was a failure outside of the purposeful actions of the user. There was no failure to accidentally cause the menu to change to uh, coke oven avec NyQuil, and there certainly was no evidence to suggest that failure is the only reason that the NyQuil chicken video was made. That medicine had a lot of help getting from its container into the frying pan. I think we can also say that this was not caused solely by device failure. This leaves us with our final element of the offense. Was this result different than what the user expected? Honestly, I'm not convinced anything happened other than what the user wanted. I feel that the video was done for social media attention and probably not that the user incorporates this dish into their regular dietary habits. This appears to me that this was the expected result by the user. I can't demonstrate any evidence to the contrary, which would bring our closing arguments to an end. And the only thing we have left to do is wait for the fictitious ruling. And I would like to imagine that we were able to get a ruling from the Honorable Judge Alvin Vulcanizer, who would conclude the following in dramatic fashion. Our fake court of not real things rules that NyQuil Chicken does not meet the definition of a use error in accordance with FDA guidance, as the result was not objectively demonstrable as different from the result expected by the user, therefore not meeting all of the elements required to be determined a use error. Furthermore, the court wishes to cite additional relevant statutory law. That in accordance with the FDA definition of abnormal use, NyQuil Chicken is representative of an intentional act that reflects reckless use beyond the reasonable means of risk mitigation. This is further evidenced by statements from the manufacturer that it is an over the counter medication and should be taken as directed using the dosage cup. So, is NyQuil Chicken a use error? In conclusion, NyQuil Chicken is not likely to meet the criteria of a use error and may more appropriately be classified as abnormal use. If you have survived this far into our fake court of not real things and the deep dive into the concepts of use errors and human factors engineering, I hope that you had as much fun watching the video as I did making it. Please like and subscribe for more videos on human factors engineering and usability for medical devices. If you need help with regulatory submissions or compliance, please visit one of our websites or our other YouTube channel, Medical Device Academy, and tell them that Usability Matt sent you.